That's no moon. It's a space station.
Hey guys, welcome back to the show. Just a quick reminder that tickets are on sale for our Hawaii conference/retreat next year, April 2026, April 20th through the 24th on the Big Island. It is our first time breaking away from Grafton. We had 4 great years in Grafton, but we are taking it overseas, and we can't wait to uh, swim with the dolphins, visit some sacred sites over there, and Hawaii is very activating. So if you're interested in joining us, journeytotruth.online is where you can find those tickets and all the other information, and we will be announcing the lineup very shortly. So we hope to see you all there. And today's guest is Morgan Johnson. So I discovered her book randomly on Amazon. It was a recommended book. I didn't know who she was, and I bought it, and then after I bought the book, I researched her and saw that she had been interviewed by Dr. Sala, and she had this incredible testimony. I was just, the book, I was guided to buy the book. So I did. And I recently started reading it, and I have so many questions. She has an incredible story, but I'm going to briefly read through her bio just to give you guys an idea of who she is and what this is going to be about today. Morgan Johnson's memoir, Manipulated Memories, is the first book in a 3-part series that recounts her involvement with the CIA's MK Ultra programs, as well as her experiences with the Army and Space Force. And from my understanding, she was actually, she joined the military, joined the Army, and it was from the Army where she was recruited into these programs, and we'll get into that a little later. She was trained as a spy as a child and then used for nefarious reasons during her time in space. When she left the military, she was discredited and mentally attacked to keep silent. Those days are over, and she stands with the many who have experienced similar stories. Now she works as an empowerment coach, helping others to find the strength they need to traverse this multidimensional world. And it's very multidimensional, as we're discovering more and more every day. So, welcome to the show, Morgan. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
Of course, I'm excited to have you here. And I know, so parts of this story are kind of dark, unfortunately, but as they all are whenever, people are brought into these programs. So, I don't want to focus too much on the details of the dark aspect. We've covered a lot of that, but we will definitely not shy away from it because I know that is part of the story. But this all started when you were very young. And you were basically, I guess 2 military men came into your school and pulled you out of class. Is that where this all starts for you?
Yes, I was 5 years old. They came in and took some blood from my finger and on using like a handheld machine, and that machine said that I was O negative and had the number 117 on it. And they asked me if I would like to go meet some more kids just like me. I was taken from my school to a car, and that car drove us to what they called the Elitist Academy, which is a school for gifted kids that works with the government.
Okay, so that was in a nutshell. I'm just reading that part of the book. So this happened so you were kindergarten, I guess?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
And then you were brought in, they came to your school, they tested your blood, and then they brought you to this academy. What did that look like, and how did they do that without your parents knowing?
My parents, I mean, the theme of my life was neglect. I had very much been ignored and not worried about. My parents were divorced, and I was with my mom at that time. And she had a boyfriend, and they were just busy being in their 20s, and they did not necessarily take care of their kids in a way that was healthy. And so they didn't really notice when I was gone. They didn't look into the things, because as we talk through this, we'll talk more about me going to that place more often. It was probably I like to guesstimate maybe like once a month, once every few months. It wasn't all the time, but it was just to do checkups or to do testing and things like that. But my parents just didn't notice and didn't care, honestly. They were busy with their own lives.
Right, which is a common theme. It seems they take children from broken homes or situations like yours, and
Part of the profiling, because
right,
it's like the less eyes on, the better kind of thing. The less people, they're like, oh, we can actually get away with this person kind of thing. Yeah, I
right,
noticed that.
right. If the parents aren't somehow involved either,
Right.
which is
It's
the case
sad, which is
sometimes.
really
Yeah.
sad, but that's, yeah.
So you weren't actually going to this elitist academy every day. It was only
No,
occasionally.
no. It was just occasionally, just for there'd be different types of testings that would happen. They would teach us different things, energy work, magic, hand-to-hand combat kind of stuff. I got into gymnastics really young at like 9 years old, so that was a big part. There were different mind control methods, such as like electroshock therapy. They were it was like writing code for a computer. So they wanted to see, like, the entire thing was its own experiment of like, how much can we get this person to do without being so hands on? So the goal wasn't to be with us all the time. It was to do small things and get us to live a certain way or do certain things that would benefit them or the mind control project itself. They kind of were just poking around in the mind, seeing what they could get away with.
Wow. Okay. So then when you went, you would go to school and then they would come take you from school. What did that look like?
A car would be parked out front. They would call me into the office. They would tell the instructor or principal, whoever was there, because I went to an alternative school. I was really against school, and so I ran away all the time. I skipped class. I was not um, available for school. I didn't wanna be there. So they would tell the teachers or whoever they were coming in to see not to mark me as absent. And of course, because they were in suits, they had badges, they listened. So just to keep it so it didn't look too bad as in me being with truancy and stuff.
Right. So did they ever, which is interesting, of course, the teacher would comply if two
Yeah.
military men walked in and said, don't mark her as absent. So when you were brought back at the end of the day, were you ever mind wiped or were you given a false set of memories to go home with?
Both, it depending on the situation, depending on the day, especially when I started going more often. When I first go like, when they picked me up and then dropped me off at the school, there were there was, like, a nurse that would meet us at the door, and she would ask us questions about our home life and ask us, "What happened last night? How do you feel today?" And then they would put something in our hand underneath the skin, and that would be something that would control, in my opinion, maybe our vibration or where we were at or how we were going to feel for the rest of the day. And then when we were leaving, we definitely got mind wiped most of the time. But we did know enough to know where we were, and they did just pretty much beg us not to tell anyone.
Really? So the thing they were putting under your hand in the book, you described it, there's like three different colors, right? And then
Yeah,
depending on how you answered questions, it
right.
would. So do you have any more insight on what that actually was?
No, and there's just there's too many questions. I have many questions about all of the things that were going on, but, my best guess is just that one made a person more docile, one may relaxed a person, probably especially if there was, like, trauma that went on at home. They wanted us to be in a very docile state so that we could be brainwashed, basically. So I have otherwise no idea.
Right, right. Okay, so this went on for a few years at school, and then at some time when you were older, you were actually they started bringing you to on mission, for lack of a better term. They started using you for missions. Did anything happen between then and when the mission started? I guess as a teenager.
Yeah, so the testing started at 8 years old. Testing would be trauma enforced. For them, they believed that trauma would make us stronger. So they started using different tactics. The first one at 8 years old was like, I don't know the name of what that machine was, but they dunked us underwater, dunked our heads underwater for 5 seconds at a time. Um, and it's really the same contraptions that they use for torturing enemies, right? Or getting information. It was that kind of thing. Or they would have us stand in the corner with like meat next to us with a lion that could barely almost get to us. And they'd use these as well, challenges, right? And so they made it seem like it was a good thing and that we were getting stronger and they were helping us become superheroes and we were these tough kids. But really, it was just trauma and torture. But those events did make us closer together, it did make us stronger. The missions we started to go on aren't there isn't a lot in that first book. It's going to be more into the second book when my second personality comes out. And there was a lot that torture that they were doing for us was creating a split in consciousness. The mind, it protects itself. And so it has to be able to stay alive and act normal. And the only way for it to do that when it's being tortured so badly is to separate consciousness.
Right.
So it split me into that super soldier alter identity.
Right. So when they were doing this dunking your head underwater and the lion and stuff, was
Yeah.
that done under? Do you remember where you were taken to do that?
Yeah, most of our places, the Elitist Academy, so I don't have an exact city, but it was a Victorian style building and it was about 2.5 hours north of Portland, Oregon. That's usually where my parents were staying, in between Portland and like Kelso, Washington. So it was always, in my opinion, it is really close to Fort Lewis. And because I know that we did train at Fort Lewis a few times for like the remote viewing projects. So I was also doing remote viewing at the time, which was looking for targets that were out of reach for soldiers on the ground. So in caves and also timelines that weren't now. So past, present, and future were all available. Let's say they were looking for a criminal that they couldn't find, they'd get a bunch of kids together and ask them to look for them.
Yeah, and I did find that interesting in your book. You mentioned that there was a protocol, obviously, when you were looking for someone, but then you would, at the end of the protocol, you would say, "Show me where this person is located in this timeline." So
Yeah.
that's something very real.
Yeah.
You don't want to locate someone in the wrong timeline and give them bad data,
Right.
which is very telling because that tells you that the elite or the private sector has a understanding of this
Oh, yes.
Common knowledge in their
common
circle.
knowledge. Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Oh,
we're
yeah.
still, we're just trying to figure this out on our own, piecing everything together. But
Yes.
you mentioned that you got on an elevator to go down to this area, and they pressed a button that said T on it. Am I mistaken?
Well, the T was when we went to Houston to go to it was the top floor of the science building, and that's where they introduced us to the Looking Glass, Project Looking Glass, which was seeing our future. And
Okay.
that's when I was 15.
Okay, yeah, because I actually have questions about that. So I just got that part
Yes.
confused. So let's
Yes.
rewind a little bit. I know part of the testing they brought you in to, I guess, as an intuitive empath to detect deception. They had
Yes.
you. They gave you a list of questions, and you questioned this man, and you were basically marking off whether he was telling the truth or lying. Can you tell us a little more about that?
Yeah, so this was a criminal that that was working or had some sort of side contract with the CIA. And then he had told someone about his involvement with them. And they were using me just to see if I could predict that, if I could know that he was lying. They wanted to use me for other different projects and different things. There's an Illuminati association that comes into this later. They wanted to see how strong of an empath I was. They already knew the answer, and so this was just their way of like seeing my value towards becoming a member of that Young Illuminati Association and other work that I would be doing with them.
Okay. Yeah, so that's fascinating. Everything's a test. It's like
Everything is a
everything's a
test.
test,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And they rely on, I guess, a fractured mind or like a broken home and somebody who is wounded, is trauma. Like they created a trauma bond with even the other kids, right? So you guys
Yeah.
would all like, um, it would just like inspire each other in a way. Like you guys kept each other going. That's the way I see it. Um, so it's always a test, yeah. And then, okay, so at some point you were a teenager and you were actually being taken from home to go on. I remember you said that an SUV would literally pull up to your house and you would leave.
Yes.
Can you tell that story?
Yeah. So that's the story that we were talking about with the scientists. And that was, but first, so my personality split. Like they have the thing with the personality split is that they had a code for it. So they had a certain phrase that they would say. And so I had just gotten a phone. It was like the first, I think it was like 15. Um, and they had called me over the phone, said the certain sentence. I separated into the other consciousness, told my dad that I was leaving for the weekend with some friends. He didn't care, and then left. And they had picked me up in an SUV. We went to a private jet. Uh, we went straight to a another airline, obviously, a hangar of some kind in Texas, and it was right around the Houston area. Then they took us to an underground bunker types. Like it was this, I want to say, is this what it was my lab? That's right. So it was my lab, which was a testing grounds for new technologies. This is where they work with ETs. They have and use their technology to create their own. So I got introduced to 5 of the beings that they were working with. And at the time, like one was a draconian. I actually met that draconian there. I don't know, you haven't probably got that far into
No,
the book.
no, I have actually.
Oh, you have?
That was going to be one of my questions because you talk about some of the extraterrestrials were you met in hologram form,
Yes.
and
This
then
is what I'm talking about. Yeah.
and then after that you met a physical Draco.
Yes.
And this is all in real time. This was obviously they switched your altar, but
Yes.
it wasn't like you were in a program yet, off planet or something. It was
No,
like
I wasn't.
yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so
It
tell us
was a
rewind a little bit and tell us about the hologram meeting the hologram extraterrestrials, what that was like, and then introducing you to the Draco.
yeah, so when we landed, a bunch of military on the private jet, when we landed, some military men came and got us, took us to just a small little building that had a elevator that went underground. And so it was an underground like base, an entire huge base. Then they took us to a room in that base where on the ground was like 5 mat discs, and then they had a remote and they turned on these holographic images of 5 different species that they were working with. Excuse me. And they just wanted us to become comfortable seeing different beings, because in our remote viewing, we already were going to be, or at least soon, we're going to be introduced to these beings, and they didn't want us to like freak out or not know what it was. They had their own purposes, so they came up with their own agenda too, right? Like so each species that came up, they gave us a whole backstory. They also split the hologram into 2, and we got to see like the organs and the way that they breathed and like what their anatomy was like compared to ours. And a lot of them were very similar to ours because they're all humanoid beings, that at least that they showed us at that time. And then once we were done being like, briefed about who these beings were, we were told we were going to go meet one of the Draconians. And it was the most terrifying experience of my life. Um, there was, he was sitting on what looked like a throne. There's some big ego going on there. These are like the highest ranking military men in the country are working in this underground bunker, and they have this one giant draconian that had wings. He looked like, I don't know if you guys have ever seen Jupiter Ascending.
Mhm.
Oh yeah.
That's exactly what they look like, the ones that have wings. Um, I mean, very similar to that. They're lighter color and they had a little bit of an iridescent shine to them, but it was very, very similar. There's some movies out there that just blow my mind with like how similar
Yeah.
and I think they're trying to tell us through movies, but
There's
I
some
digress.
intense disclosure in that movie.
Yeah,
Right.
100%.
I've never seen more Draco disclosure than that movie, I don't think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Side note, I just saw on Prime, there's a documentary called Reptilians, and it's all about reptilians, like, and running the world.
Really?
It's like a little.
Interesting.
I haven't seen it yet, but I've been seeing people share it on X, and I put it as a save to watch because I'm just curious of what they're saying.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, so that's the one thing about my story and about who I am. I don't watch other people's stuff. I haven't. It took me about 7 years to write this book because I only didn't want my story to get influenced by anyone else's. So I'm just now that the story's out, like being open to other people's perspectives and storylines, but I was very protective of my memories for a long time.
right. Well, I don't believe I was guided to your book by accident. I found it very synchronistic, and then once I picked it up, and there was a lot of parallels to my experience and stuff, and we can talk about off camera. But I was you immediately get a feeling reading somebody's story, like, oh, this is real.
Yeah.
Like you actually this I don't know how to describe it other than I just feel that this is a legitimate story as opposed to some people like grabbing onto memories through hypnosis sessions and stuff. It's a little
Sure.
different. You gonna
Yeah.
say something, Aaron?
I just want to say real quick, I'm glad you said that because I see a lot of people, a lot of the skeptics or people that just like, this is just too far out there for them and they just don't want to believe it or it's too far out of their paradigm. They tend to grab onto the easy explanation of all these people like yourself coming out with these stories. It's like, oh, you're all just regurgitating Corey Good or Tony Rodriguez or Randy Kramer, somebody that's been around longer that, oh, you just like listen to theirs and then some of them even admit they're like, oh, well, maybe through listening to these other people, they like got these false memories, like they think this is real, but it's kind of, you're just kind of like subconsciously picking up. Um, and if you actually do your research on this topic, you'll come to the conclusion that that's not true because there's just way too much that I feel like people can prove to themselves that this is real. But it's easy to just like something that seems too far out of your paradigm to just be like, oh, that's just people listening to other people's stories and then either knowingly copying and plagiarizing it or unknowingly doing it, or they just watch too much sci-fi or, and then they're just like, but it's funny because when you do your research, you realize all the sci-fi stuff out there is disclosure. It's not the other way around. It's like, oh, you watched too much sci-fi and now you're regurgitating that. It's like, no, the sci-fi itself is disclosing the same thing these people like yourself
We're talking
have
about right.
experienced firsthand. And there's ton of evidence pointing to that as well. And why do you think that is that they put out so much disclosure in movies and shows and things? I know what I believe, but why
Well,
do
I
you think?
believe they're trying to control the narrative.
Yeah.
I think that there's very few movies that are portraying ETs or our lives outside of this in a good light. Um, that would be my goal is, I have written a screenplay for this book and I want people to look at the life outside of here as just as very similar to here, right? There's different types of beings. There's good ones. There's not good ones. There's more of a neutrality that exists out there that everybody's trying to survive and keep each other alive and be helpful. There's a loving nature to all of this. Like, it doesn't have to be us against them. And there is this, in Hollywood, this us against them that it really is being perpetuated. I really can't stand that narrative.
Right.
Doesn't have to be the whole story.
And it's always, dystopian future, alien invasion, all that stuff.
Yes.
Obviously, it's programming, predictive programming.
Right.
So going back to encountering this Draco, what happened after you
Yes.
met him?
So when I met him, he talked to me telepathically, and the only thing he said to me was, "You don't have to fear me today," which was just this ominous, mean-spirited, and it like sounded like a bunch of hissing noises in my head, and I was like paralyzed and couldn't move. It was absolutely terrifying. I was with a couple boys. They loved him. I think they were enthralled with the idea of this powerful being. Boys are really into like dinosaurs. And so they were younger kids. So probably 10, 12 years old at that time. So they probably thought it was like the best day of their lives. But for me, it was very scary. I could feel the threat from him. He was very intimidating. I mean, they eat people, they eat animals. There is something there to be, worried about. So when they right before they introduced us, they were like, yes, you do need to be careful and cautious if you ever meet one of these beings outside of here, but they won't hurt you here because you're with us.
Right.
So
So, okay, you meet him. He gives
yes,
he says you don't have to worry about him or fear him today. Then
yes.
where did they bring you after that?
We went to a remote viewing room, which was literally like next door. And they brought all the kids in there. They were looking for a specific vehicle that had a satellite on it. It was like some rebellion against the CIA or against whatever it was that they were doing at the time. And they had us all remote view and look for that vehicle. So that's what we did.
So then you accomplished the mission. Then they take you back home, and then
No, we went to a hotel that night
okay,
and stayed in Houston. And then the next day went to a building that looked like it was abandoned, but there were people inside. It had like a conveyor belt, like at a courthouse. And this was super secretive. This was where Project Looking Glass was being utilized, or a portion of it. So there's probably different modalities when we're talking Project Looking Glass to see which is um, the way that they see the future. And so they took me and the two boys that had come with us, took us up to the top floor of this science lab. And there was a ball of mercury that sat like 3 feet off the ground, and it was encased in like a clear encasement. And there was one chair sitting in front of it, and they made me sit in the chair first. Do you want me to keep going?
yeah, of course,
Yeah.
I'm here
Okay.
for it. Yeah,
Okay. And there was like a mad scientist type guy. I named him Dr. Rupert, I think, in my screenplay, but I'm not 100% what his name was. But he put like dials on my forehead and on my fingertips, and strapped me to this chair. Everybody else went to the back of the room, and they turned on this ball. And this ball, it's so hard to explain. I mean, it's in the book. It's much easier to easily describe there, but a holographic type, I mean, the best HD you've ever seen screen ends up showing up around this ball, and it shows my memories from the future from my perspective. And so I was first at a rally or protest for disclosure at the White House, where there was tons of people and everybody was screaming, "We want disclosure." And so there was some sort of movement I had been a part of And then it showed my trips in space. It showed like different ET beings that I had been working with in space. And it showed a court proceeding with like hundreds of people waiting outside. So those were the three things that they saw when they put me in the chair. And then they put the two boys in the chair, where they showed the MK Ultra stuff of them training to become killers. They were being messed with. They both went to Iraq during the war, and so they were both being messed with over there, brainwashed, that type of stuff. It showed different events, which is all in the book. I don't know, like getting into their lives isn't so necessary right at this point.
Right. Yeah, so I found it interesting in the book you talked about you seeing this disclosure protest and you were like, "What's disclosure?" You didn't even know at the
No, I
time.
was a kid.
That term. Yeah.
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 Disclose what?
Right,
Yeah.
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 Yeah, I was 15 and I had no idea what I didn't know I'd go into the army. I didn't know that I would go to space or that any of this was going to happen. But once they figured that out, um, right after that, they took us home, but they brought me back first and put me and did some electroshock therapy where they were like writing code into my mind, where they'd shock me, say a sentence, shock me again, say a sentence, shock me again. And it was just little stuff to like make me scared of the world, tell me that no one, I couldn't trust anyone, tell me not to take care of myself, like those types of things, just so that I wouldn't become that person in the future that was willing to stand up and come out about disclosure.
Right, they wanted you
Right.
to cower in and yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Which is very disheartening, because I wonder I would imagine that happens to a number of us in different modalities probably, but, most people don't have memory of that actually happening to them. They just
Right.
they don't understand why they don't fit in or why they feel the way they do, and it's because they've been programmed quite literally to feel that way. And I think a lot of these towers that are up, I think they pump a frequency to keep people in that frequency, in that
And
programming.
satellites.
Yeah.
Yes. And I
Yeah.
know they do that.
Yeah,
For
absolutely. And just a quick side note, I just moved out of my hometown, St. Louis, Missouri, where sometimes I would spiral in my thoughts and I would run these programs. And as soon as I moved out of the state, I feel like I broke free from that. And I've been much better mental health and in a much better mental state. It was nothing that I let win, but it was always there and I always had to battle it. And I feel like it was just something running there, and getting out of my hometown was key to, I think, my whole journey. So that's just I feel like I was in some capacity that was happening to me. But
yeah.
okay, so you after this, you go through your teenage years and you're being pulled on these missions, and eventually you find yourself at an Illuminati party. Is that the
Yeah.
next part of this story?
Yeah, there was one Illuminati party that I put in the book. There is going to be multiple other ones once those memories start coming back. I don't have a lot of memory. I mean, remembering all of this stuff is like it's like data, right? And it's like my brain can only hold so much data at a time. There are limitations. So as some information comes up, more information comes up, like I have to be able to take it all on. So there is one Illuminati party that shows it was just when I was younger. They brought me in. It was like some initiation and to show me what I could have if I were to stay in their programming and to work with them, but it wasn't, it was the PG part of the party. That was just the beginning few hours. They didn't, I knew, I could feel there was something wrong. It's something bad happening there, but there was definitely uh, nothing really bad that they showed me.
Right, and this is whenever they dangled the carrot in front of you, they said you could have all this,
Yeah.
and they said 20 years in the blink of an eye, and you can have all this, and you didn't know what that meant at the time, but obviously a form of a 20 and back, what we hear about.
No, so that was separate. That
Okay.
was the 20 years was So me and my alter had got tired of the program. We didn't want to be there. We were done. We were, we felt like there was no emotion in the place that we were dealing with, that was like forced entertainment, and that these missions were shady. Like everybody else believed in what they were doing, and we had just become rebelling to rebel against it. I couldn't handle it. She couldn't handle it. So we wanted out. And the only way normally that you're going to get out is they have to kill you. So the Illuminati and the CIA put together a contract of 20 years of if that they would make it look like I was out, but I would still be on track for the mental manipulation and the mind control programming. I just wouldn't know that it was happening. So they wanted me to sign that contract, and they were saying, we'll give you 300 grand, which makes no sense because they were going to take my memories. So they weren't, they weren't ever going to give me any money, but they were saying, you could have all this if you just sign your life away to us for the next 20 years so that we can get all this data and information from the mind control stuff.
Oh, okay. So the way I interpreted that, when they said 20 years in the blink of an eye, I just thought they meant like a 20 and back. And then
Oh, yeah.
like you do a 20 and back for us, sign this contract, then you can have all this. Like that's the way I perceive that. So it's interesting to hear your take on that.
Yeah.
Okay, so did you sign that contract when they
I
gave
did.
it? And what did that look like?
So that looked like them removing all of my memories of the Elitist Academy, of the Illuminati Association, anything that had to do with the CIA. So they brought me into a room. They put me into this chair that had this like over thing that goes over your head like a hairdryer at a salon. And they picked through my memories and they deleted each one. Deleted isn't the right word. They suppressed, because obviously I got those memories back. So they just suppressed them into my subconscious mind, which is in the body. So I was able to retrieve those memories as I got older. But once that was done, they implanted other untrue memories into my mind and convinced me I was a drug addict. So I was 16 years old when I signed that contract, and when they picked me up, they suppressed the other memories. Then they put in that I was a drug addict. I woke up the next day like wanting a fix of hard drugs. Like I was no longer a part of that, didn't remember anything that had happened, and I had become a regular teenager with a whole bunch of trauma.
Okay, wow. So that's about as far as I think I got in the book, maybe a little further. But at what point do you join the army, join the military?
I joined the army. I had just turned 18. There was a whole stint that I signed up at 16, was supposed to leave at 17. Something happened, and I had to wait till I was 18. Uh, but yeah, I went in. My birthday's in June. I went in November of 2003. So I was 18.
And then what did you actually do in the army?
I was a 25 Bravo, so I was an informations operator analyst, which is fancy for computer networking.
Do you think you were steered into the army?
Yes, I was 100%. I was forced by my mother, who I believe was paid by them. I don't know that she remembers that, but I do know that I believe that had something to do with it. Also, the recruiter came to my house unannounced when I had been at a party the whole night, and I didn't have any good reason to say no. So I felt very forced into it.
Right. Aaron, that reminds me of RGK's story. The recruiter kept coming to her house, and somehow her mom was in on it, like convincing her to
Yeah.
join the military.
Right.
And she didn't
Right.
want
Yeah.
to. She wanted to play
I
in a
didn't want
band.
to either.
You said
Yeah,
her mom was like kept pressuring her to go to
Yes.
the military, and she's like,
Same.
"No, I don't want to."
as if the
Yeah.
recruiter had got to her mom
Right.
and
Yeah.
blackmailed her mom or something. Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's
It was
interesting.
2003. We were in the middle of a war. I did not want to go to
Right.
the army. No
Go to
way.
Iraq. Go to Afghanistan, Iraq.
Yeah.
Right.
That was not in my plans.
So how long? I mean, that might have been the plan all along too. Like,
Right.
but how long how long were you in the military, in the army, before you were actually recruited for space program?
So it was 1 year. It was quite obvious now that I look back at it because I got originally when I went in, I went to Fort Jackson for basic training. I went to Fort Gordon for some AIT job school stuff. And then I had orders for Germany. I got ripped out of those orders, taken out, and then assigned to go back to Fort Lewis, which was quite, obvious to me now that they just wanted me closer to the projects. They wanted me in that area. Um, and then so within the first year, I was 19. It was right before I had a surgery. I was working for my first sergeant in his office and just getting him coffee, just doing paperwork. It was really quite lame. I really didn't like that job. I didn't really like being in the army, honestly. It, I'm a creative. I'm a sensitive and a creative, and I like to be creative. So there wasn't a lot of room for that there for me. But it's one day, my first sergeant said, we got some high ranking officials that want you to come meet with them. And it was a commander and two of his, I have no idea who they were, but the commander brought me into a room by myself. He told me, I have this opportunity for you. It's called a 20 and back. You could go to space. And I was excited. I mean, excited isn't even the word. It was like a dream come true. I was already upset that I had to come home, right? Because Fort Lewis was right around my house, and I wanted, if I was going to go in the army, I wanted to go somewhere else. I was really excited to go to Germany, and that just didn't happen. So then when he said you can go to space, I thought he was kidding, but it was a real thing. And I jumped at the chance. He did tell me you can't tell anyone, and nobody's gonna know that you ever went because we're gonna take your memories when you get back. I did not care. It didn't matter to me. I just wanted to go on an adventure.
Interesting. Yeah, at that point, after living a life like that, I mean, it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
just get me out of here, which I
Yes.
think they rely on, and it's like
Yeah.
systematic, very systematic the way they do it. It's like a systematic breakdown of your psyche, and it's just like, yeah,
Yes.
get me out of here. Okay, so that was, I know that's an entirely different interview if we wanted, but just in a nutshell, like what happened? Do you remember? Did you sign a contract? Did you get put in a
Yeah.
chair? Like, what did the journey from Earth to space look like? Where did you go first, if you have that memory?
Yeah. I have lots of memory. I'm a lucky one that gets. I'm clairvoyant, so I get to, I guess, maneuver around in my subconscious mind. So I'm able to pull up memories. So I have a lot of memories. It was literally the next day. They came and I wasn't aware of it at the time because I wasn't allowed to tell anyone. But the boyfriend I had at the time was also being recruited. He was a super genius computer type, and so it was just appropriate for him to go. They picked us up. Just some random guy came up to me and said, "It's time to go." We went to, so Fort Lewis has, its neighbor is McCord Air Force Base. So it's literally within the same, it's right across the street is what we call it. It's right down the street. And we went to an underground hangar in the McCord Air Force Base, and they told us we're going to the moon. And we took, I don't, there are some discrepancies in my memories when it comes to how long. I want to say it was 3 days, but it might not have been to get to the moon, and I only say that I probably said between 24 hours and 3 days, and to normally, you can hyper jump to anywhere quickly, right? So, the only reason that that would have happened was to acclimate us to space life, right? To get us used to being in a spaceship, to start us off softly instead of just throwing us into, hyper jumping all over the galaxy. So first we went to the moon to get new uniforms, to get our assignments, to figure out what jobs we were going to do, and to really be acclimated into what was about to happen for the next 20 years.
Right. So you went to the moon in a craft, though.
Yes.
In this case, do you have any memory of that? Was it just a triangle craft, a dart, like what we hear
It
about?
looked like in between a fighter jet and a spaceship.
Kind of
So
like
it,
kind of like an F-117. Like that's
oh, I haven't seen, I don't know, maybe,
right.
maybe, but it was very similar to that. But it like, it did move straight up and go straight out. So it definitely wasn't one of our our jets, but it could have been one that was, what do they call that when they take their technology and
Reverse
turn it?
engineered?
Yeah, reverse engineered spaceship that they just use. And they probably could have done that so that it looked legit from because the hangar to the underground, where, because it was all underground where the ship was, it just opened up, and then we set us on top of the surface, and then we went straight up from there, and then we turned on camouflage, and no one could see us.
Right. So like a stealth craft,
Yeah, yeah.
effectively. Okay, so so you get to the moon. Did they give you a series of immunizations on the moon? Was it a whole new, uh, was it like being reintroduced into the military again?
Yes, and it was debrief after debrief. There's a lot of different things that we had to go through. We went through, I do believe we did the age regression, and it's not an actual age regression. It was just our med beds. We did the med beds so that it would heal anything that was minorly wrong with us, so that we had the best chance to keep our physical bodies, which med beds are available in space more often than not on bigger ships. But we did do that. We also got our uniforms, and I was taken to the commander to have like a pep talk about how there was a bunch of men in space that had like not never, but hadn't been around women in many years, or had only male
Contact.
company.
Yeah.
So that's why they chose to put me in an officer school, so that I could be of some rank, and so that I could have a better chance at not being pushed around.
Interesting. So you wouldn't be so did you find yourself around large groups of men then after that?
Yeah.
But you were a higher rank, so they
Yeah.
kinda had to look up to you.
Yes, and there were still some shady things that went down when they, because some of them could get a hold of a memory wipe. So there were some things that definitely happened in space, but
What can you tell us about the facility on the moon? What did that look like? Do you remember any of those details?
no, I don't have a lot about the specifics of the moon. I was only there for a few days, so it really wasn't something that kind of burned into my mind.
Right. And then to your recall, were there any extraterrestrials on the moon base?
I believe there were some, but few.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it seems like a common, like everyone that goes to the moon first to do exactly what you do. They get read into the program and then there's, stationed wherever they're going to be stationed from the moon. It's like the moon is this jumping off point for the
Is that
program.
normal? I've never, like, I don't, like
I,
I said, I haven't heard
I would
anything.
say almost nearly every person we've interviewed claims
Jeez.
something similar to that, and
Oh,
always going to the moon first. And then, like, there's so many different variations of what you could
sure,
do. Some people actually get punished, and they get stuck working on the moon and, like, the mines and stuff, and they don't
sure.
even get to go on to where they were promised or whatever. So it's always different, but it seems to be something very real there. And I think, what's the most interesting to me is like you get online now and everybody, this whole flat earth narrative, and then they're saying that the moon is a hologram, it's not real, and all this stuff. That would totally undermine any SSP story
Yeah.
at all. And I think that's one of the
Um,
primary focuses and purposes for that psyop.
And it reminds a lot of truth because it completely takes you away from the actual reality of what's going on and gives you this fantasy that you're focused on that isn't real, but you're convinced is real, right? So like everything about space and ETs and you know everything else is like you're not looking that you're looking at this fake, and all you care about is flat Earth and proving that it's real and talking about it.
Right.
And I noticed they really ramped up that psyop right when like this big awakening was happening, like 2015, 2016, 2017. That's right when they really like pushed the flat Earth. And I started before that. I didn't see any
Right.
flat Earth. I didn't see
It's almost, yeah,
anything before that. And and my awakening happened in 2012. For the first like 4 years, I didn't see it. And then all of a sudden, all at once, all these people are talking about flat Earth, and it's tons of YouTube videos, and it's all over the place.
it's
It's so
almost as if,
manufactured,
yeah,
so manufactured.
it's almost as if they're like, shit, people are starting to remember. Quick, tell them the earth is flat
Yeah.
and then we're trapped and
Right,
there's no space.
right,
But
exactly.
so we could either go two ways with this interview now, because I know
Yeah.
getting into the space portion of it is going to be a whole long thing. But
Yeah.
your prologue in your book talks about memory of life before Earth. Yeah, you coming here before
Yeah.
Earth, and what that was like. It's up to you. I'll let you decide where you want to go with this. Would you like to share your memories of your life before, what you were doing before you chose to come to Earth, or do you want to continue on the space program part of this?
That's an interesting question. There is there is much more to my but I'm not I want to leave it for the second book. That's important for me that people have something to look forward to. And
Right.
I hinted towards it in the prologue. And I also I I want it to be well worth the wait. Does that make sense? Like that there is something that people are waiting for. That what I'll say is that I was protecting an in-between space. I was a light being. I was in between lives when I heard a call from Earth itself. And I've heard many people speak of this, that they heard the call to come help Earth. But yes, I have many memories of pre-life that are going to be very interesting to people, and it will also be in the screenplay that I have written. But I do want to save some stuff.
Of course, yeah.
Mhm.
But you did know, like, what you did put in the prologue was that you specifically chose the life
Yes.
that you live now, and which
Yes.
seems counterintuitive when you get here and suffer. But
Yeah.
why do you remember why you made that decision to come live the life that you were living now?
To prove to people that you can evolve past anything, that the mind is so powerful that it can heal from anything, and that as a person who has been through a whole bunch of horrific stuff, that I can still be a loving, caring, neutral person to this world and not be a victim of it. And that also being a person to stand up for the truth for this kind of stuff. In the prologue, it was a little more like people are stealing information about this type of stuff, and they're holding it for themselves and using it to their advantage, which we already know is happening.
Like the secret societies, you mean?
Yeah,
Yep.
they secret societies and also parts of the government. I'm not saying the government's bad. I'm saying that parts of it are holding information that they're not releasing to people, and it is harming people. And also that I was really upset about the kids being messed with, like going into the projects like I did. So I wanted to experience it. I wanted to live through it, and I wanted to teach people how to become stronger than what they, because their whole goal was try to get me to kill myself or get the boys who were involved with my story to kill me, because it would take all the blood off their hands, right? Like, they wanted me gone, but they didn't want to look like they were the ones to do it. So I was very passionate in the prologue about um, wanting to be a person that stands up for the truth, and then also shows people that you can still become a good person even after the world has victimized you. There's also a level of karma that comes from this. I had my own karma of being a jerk in some of my past lives. So I got to play out some of that, where I got to experience some of that karma and move on with my soul gets to evolve and ascend.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, and that's a beautiful approach. I think it's the only way to look at this, because you can perpetuate your victimhood forever, but where's that gonna
Yeah.
get you? And
No.
I see people get stuck in that loop, but I think it's also manufactured, like, they want them stuck in that
Yes.
loop. And,
Yes.
to s for somebody to
Right.
break free and talk about it like you're doing, that goes a long way. So
Or well, it's a form of like worshiping the dark too. If you really like, but a lot of people are convinced. They think like these dark forces are so powerful and there's nothing we can do and we just have to accept it, and but then it's like you're literally, that's what they want you to believe, right?
Yeah.
That's like you're falling right in their trap, and then what you're
Yeah.
doing is you're just further feeding into that, um and then keeping yourself stuck in that loop, and giving your power, you're giving your power away. You're worshiping the dark. You're saying, oh, that the dark forces are more powerful than me, or more powerful than anything else. Essentially, you're saying they are God. But it's like, well, if that's what you believe, that's what's going to be mirrored to you, right? Because that's how reality works. Because really, God is everything, which means it's you also. Which means
Yeah.
if that's what you're constantly feeding into, that's what's going to keep showing up. That being said, there is still a level of objective reality that we have to work within, that, like you said, you incarnated here to help. But there are forces way above all this stuff.
Yeah.
And then people, well, why don't they just stop it? Why don't they intervene? And that's a whole other topic, but I like what you said. I looked on your website and you have a little blurb, and then you just really briefly mentioned that there are benevolent civilizations that are watching over us. Um, what, from your perspective, from your experience, what are those benevolent beings and forces watching over us, and what's going on there?
So I don't like to put a label on it. I know that there are lots of labels out in the SSP community with certain galactic forces and different names of them. I got to a really high rank when I was in the SSP. And so I got to go to Saturn, where they had meeting halls of people from all over the galaxy that came together. And this is, thousands, and I have no idea how many beings, but thousands of beings that keep watch over the entire galaxy itself. So, and the actual like housing unit of that, around the outside of it, is giant statues of beings that have been extinct. Okay. So
Mhm.
like, they know what they're there for. They're there to protect and keep people alive. And also they just don't intervene when it comes to the evolution of a planet, of a species. They're they it's not even it's just a known fact that the people have to evolve on their own. It's part of
Yeah.
the initiation into becoming a stronger and better, species. If someone was, if a certain being was to come down and like, they help us, they do help us.
Yeah.
They
Oh,
give
yeah.
us ideas, they give us, inventions, they talk to people, they inspire us through different actions, but they can't just come down and be like, here's the rule book, here's how you get off this planet and become a spacefaring race. Like, that's just never.
And let's just clean up the cabal all at once,
Yeah.
but then you guys didn't learn your lessons and you didn't grow from those. They'd be robbing us from
Wouldn't.
all that
Yeah.
growth that needs to happen. But they do help, like you said, in the ways that they can.
Yeah.
And the more we're aware, I think we are, of them, and the more we ask, the more that karmically they're allowed to help. but we have
Agreed.
to meet them halfway more.
Agreed. And there is a certain place in life that you have to be internally, right? You have
Yeah.
to be a neutral, loving, caring person before you're going to start to get information or downloads or gifts. I was 33 years old when I started to become psychic. I, prior to that, had no interest in spirituality. I was just trying to survive. I had people trying to kill me. There was no no
Yeah.
time for a spiritual existence. And then all of a sudden I woke up and had this wild experience that taught me about all of these things very quickly. And I had to learn about the dark and about the light really fast. And yes, there is a battle that's going on, but it's an internal battle. And it shows
Yeah.
up, we manifest that in our world because it's going on internally. If everyone were to win their own internal battle, we wouldn't have war. We wouldn't
Right.
be killing each other. Animals wouldn't kill each other. It would be a utopian world. There are ones that exist, but that's not how we have chosen to learn yet.
Beautifully said.
It's
I agree
very
with all
beautiful.
that. And
The
I
wars
think,
within manifest without. That's it.
right,
Yeah.
It's because we're at war within. That's why there's wars without, and that's why chaos within is chaos without. As above, so below. As within, so without. That's how
right.
it works. Yep.
And I think that maybe this planet was once that utopian world at one point before
Yeah.
some form of cataclysm or series of cataclysms. I guess was a form of devolution in a sense, but maybe we all created that through some form of consensus reality. We all agreed on a certain set of beliefs to experience limitation and to go through these trials and tribulations to then come out of it as a more enhanced, evolved soul. So there's many different ways to look at it, but I do want to ask, so where do your parents come into this today?
I don't speak to any of my family today. A lot of them have been swayed in their own ways. So there are different types of machinery and suggestion tools where they can send literal thoughts to people. And so my family has been like one by one turned against me. And I came forward with some truths that they weren't comfortable with. And so there just isn't a relationship there. And this, I'm not the only one, I think, that's experienced something like this. I know that other people have come out against, I know like Corey's ex-wife came out against him and like a whole bunch of people because they get messed with. And so it's almost like better for me to be farther away from my family so that they don't have to receive um, any manipulation just to get to me.
Right. It's almost like as if, in a way, you're keeping them safe by keep staying distant. At least that's the way you see it. Yeah. Which I understand. I mean, it's a very real reality, and there's no length they won't go to. Unfortunately, it's a
Yes.
game they like to play, and yeah.
Well,
I
sometimes
mean,
it's just this information seems crazy to people, so they just think
yes.
you must be crazy
Yes.
now. You're going
Yeah.
crazy,
Yeah,
Yeah.
or you're doing this for attention or fame or
Oh,
whatever.
yeah.
There's that classic. So, does your family think those things about you? That you're either doing this for attention or that you went crazy or
So, yeah, they definitely think I went crazy. But so for me, when I got out of the military after going to space and coming back, I got into hard drugs for about 10 years. And I went down, I mean, I was holding so much trauma that I had to, and I don't regret a day of it. I had to have something to soothe me to be able to stay on this planet. Otherwise, I wouldn't have.
Mm,
So I lived a life full of, crime, and it's all in the book. I don't hold back on telling my own, secrets and the things that I had to go through. But they couldn't handle, I mean, that's a lot on a family.
right.
oh yeah,
So, I don't regret my portion of that, but I also do see from their perspective that like they couldn't take any more anyway. So they already thought I was crazy because of the drugs. And so I got sober July 13th, 2018 from those drugs. And I have been sober since, but they have never seen it.
Right.
Okay.
So I want to
Wow.
ask you something about the Illuminati party, or whenever the guy asked you, whenever he said 20 years in a blink of an eye, and this can all be yours. Um, you said you don't think that was the actual 20 and back. It didn't happen yet, right? That didn't happen in
Right.
the military. But I wonder if that contract you signed after that offer was your consent to being basically
To let
recruited.
them take
Y-
you and do the 20
Yeah, like 20 years in a blink of an eye. I'm pretty sure that's like them telling you 20 and back without a 20 without saying it. So I wonder if like when you signed that contract, it consented to you being brought into the military and then taken. Does that resonate with
It's
you?
possible.
Yeah.
That's 100% possible. I just also know that a lot of the you haven't got to that part in the book yet, but there was a group of boys that came against me and had a lot of essay stuff happen and really intense domestic violence stuff and those types of things that happened. And I believe I was agreeing to have those things happen at the same time. So I'm sure it was a thick contract that I just signed. I didn't know, I was too naive to know what any of it meant, or I don't think I even read it.
Right.
So it could have all been in there.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And one of the scary things about that contract, so Daryl James, I don't know if you're familiar with him, he was recruited out of the Navy into the SSP, Secret Space Program, and he said he did start reading the contract that they had him sign, and one of the first things it said is the consciousness of the first party now belongs to the second party, and
It
and
is.
yeah, that was the
They
one.
own your consciousness.
Yeah,
Jeez.
Yeah.
that was
How
the
about that?
one thing he remembered reading in the contract that just stuck with him, you know.
Dang.
Before
Yeah.
they told him like to stop reading it, we'll be here forever. If you read it all, just sign it, basically.
Sure.
And
Sure.
so it's the fact that they can't technically own your consciousness, but if you give
No.
consent, then they can manipulate it and use it to their,
Yes.
on their behalf. So, um, yeah, so this is a lot here, and I know we can get into a lot more, but for the sake of time, we'll just kind of keep it short today. And then I would absolutely love to do a part two where we dive deeper into your time and space and what that journey looked like, because there's three books worth of material here and stuff that you're remembering. So maybe we can do this again very soon, and we can dive a little deeper into what happens next. But I just want to thank you for your bravery and coming forward and joining us today. And can you please let our audience know like your website and where they can find your book and all that stuff?
Yes. So my website is Morgan Ray, RAE Johnson author.com. And my book will be available on there, but it just takes you to an Amazon website. You can get to it straight through Amazon. It's Manipulated Memories. And I appreciate you having me on today. I'm also an empowerment coach, and I do hold empowerment sessions with people, and that will be available on my website as well. I also do have a script that is ready for notes and working with directors and anybody who's open to write making a movie about this type of material.
Yeah, that's brilliant, and I think that that's on the horizon. I think that there's gonna start being movies. I mean, there already is movies kind of about this
There,
stuff, but I don't know
yeah.
if they're grabbing specifically from someone's testimony. I think they're pulling from many testimonies, but to do one on a specific life, I think would be very interesting to
Mhm.
see, and that would plant so many seeds and unlock so many memories that maybe the collective isn't quite ready for, but when it does get made, and I believe it will, I think at that point, it's gonna be like the floodgates are open and people are gonna remember and know about this stuff.
Agreed.
There's a couple shows, The Expanse and Halo are the two big series that really are like big SSP disclosure
Right.
in my mind.
Yeah, I
Love
agree.
those.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. Lot of disclosure in those. And then Jupiter Sending, as we talked about earlier, is big like Draco control kind of disclosure. And
Right.
Captain
there's plenty
Marvel
of others.
is a good one about actual flight travel. Like that's how we got around.
Captain
Mm,
Marvel, you said?
Captain.
Yeah, Captain Marvel.
Okay.
Wow,
Awesome.
awesome.
Marvel.
Okay, cool. So, yeah, we'll do a part 2 and we'll get into, your time and space. I think that would be really we can this way we can spend more time on it and we're not at the tail end of a, interview. So, we'll set that up, and I look forward to it. But thank you so much for joining us today. It's a powerful testimony, and I think it'll go a long way. And I thank you for sharing it with everyone. And thank you guys all for being here today. We love you, and we can't do this without you. So until next time, have a great evening. Good night. It's just literally the way of the heart, and that's the way of the future. So
they are the ones that guard this planet. They open portals, they close portals, and they kind of protect us as a whole.
We wake up and we're like, holy shit, I've been lied to.
And I'm going to explain how this works and why they want our souls so badly.
When I'm talking about what is possible, I mean as far as the secret space program.
It's like, this is the future, and it is a part of this golden age we're moving into. There's no hiding. You can't hide this, so.
Your quantum body, bringing more back online, like as in reloading past lives, soul fragments coming back, dismantling implants.
It might be different star languages that might come through. And we're talking a lot about dimensional beings, and they're very highly telepathic.
It's like looking around. It doesn't see us. It can't see us. I can see it, but it can't see us. It can hear us, and it knows something's going around.
But humanity does have a bright future, and I'm going to prove it to you beyond a shadow of a doubt.
The minute I came into their energy, I was like, this isn't a real human. Their eyes were different color. And so I do believe it was a clone.
This thing is going for sometimes years at a time on these missions. Is this thing going to other planets? And I knew that they wouldn't be able to respond, but I wanted to see their reaction because that was going to tell me. And it was good because she froze up and she looked at the back of the room to her superior military guy. And then she looked back at me and she's like, we can't talk about that.
And I can hear my higher self come in, and it's definitely my higher self, go, don't say a word, do not let them know who you are. And I began to leave my body at that point.
And it is biblical. I'm not a biblical person. I've never read the Bible. My family wasn't really religious, so it's just really interesting as I've been starting to get these updates, even through the Alliance, I'm discovering it is very much biblical.
When I got over there, a blue light come down right over me, and boom, I was on a ship. And I was looking at 6 people, 3 men, 3 women, and every one of them I looked at didn't seem very interested at all that I was there.